a good time to start a meeting.
That's my 6 o'clock alarm. So we will call the April 21st, 2022 meeting of the marijuana subcommittee for Whitewater Township to order. If we begin with roll call, please.
Hall,
Here.
Goss. Here. Jacobson.
Here.
Miller.
Yes, present.
And Bowman is not available.
Okay. Everybody has an agenda. Are there any additions, deletions, changes, amendments to the agenda? Anyone proposes to make? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to accept the agenda as presented.
I'll make motion to accept the agenda as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? No discussion? Roll call vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those
Aye.
opposed? Wonderful. Any declaration of conflicts of interest that anyone foresees for this evening's meeting? No conflicts of interest? Okay. We can now allow for public comment and we can begin here in the Township Hall, but I do not see any members of the public present, and we are broadcasting this via Zoom, I assume. So is there anyone on Zoom Lois, that would wish to make a public comment?
Mr. Glenn.
Thank you, but no comment at this time.
Thank you.
Okay, we have offered public comment. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the March 21st, 2022 special meeting minutes?
Yeah.
So really, I found them to be a very accurate record of what happened. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes as submitted.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as submitted.
We have a motion and support. Any discussion? And roll call for approval of the minutes. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, say aye. And we have the minutes approved. First item on the agenda is applications. I'll begin with a little bit. I see Cheryl did an excellent job on a little reorganization and numbering and some sub numbering, I guess you could say, to make it easier to understand. I think it's I think it's about as good as we can get. We can micro review it as much as we want, but I think we have it, 99% in that format that we need. The one, and most importantly, in my opinion, makes it easier for me to track the information that's coming in based upon the application. And just as important, hopefully will guide the applicant through the process and make it clear that when you're assembling these application materials, don't shuffle them like a deck of cards, assemble them and put it in order and
Yeah.
make the review process go much easier.
I only had one comment. As I was inserting this question on the first page of each application, the first question in red, have you received pre-qualification from the state of Michigan for the uses selected above? Then what do we need to, how are they going to answer that? Should we leave some room for them to answer? And what kind of answer are we expecting? Just a yes or a no? Should we have a yes with a line you can check or a no with a line you can check, or will they write something, do you think?
Good point. I've, as I told the committee last month, I've had discussions with people that said the state is really getting on the ball and informing them that they're pre-qualified. And I don't know if there's actually a written document that would accompany that.
Yeah. If there was, it would be nice to get a copy
Yes,
of
and I'm
it.
sure we can find out with a simple email to the, whatever they've renamed the agency this
yeah.
weekend, Lansing.
Right,
to
yeah,
email this.
exactly.
Say, hey, if you pre-qualify somebody, do you give them written notice? And if so, is it just an email? Is it something formal?
Yeah.
Because then you could modify this to say, if yes, then please provide document.
Yeah,
provided
that's what
you
I was
by
wondering,
whoever.
if we need to modify this to say how they, you know, if yes, please provide a copy of your pre-qualification document or something.
Yes, I think that makes sense. Not
Have
having
a,
the answer.
have a
knowing,
check
you know.
mark for no, a line for no, and then yes. And then, if yes, please provide a copy.
Yes.
State
If
says
yes.
they'll send an email to the applicant and to the township clerk unless they've been notified to send it to somebody else when they do that pre-approval thing, so.
Okay. So they could just actually forward us the email.
Or print it out and put it in the packet.
Yeah,
They should
right.
be able to have it out.
Okay, so I can make that change for next time.
Okay. Does anyone have any more discussion on the applications?
Yeah, I had, on page 3, 2 more pages past this, under G, number 5,
G5, yes.
it says a description and plan of all equipment and methods that will be employed to stop any impact to adjacent uses, including enforceable assurances that no odor will be detected from outside of the permitted premise. Does that mean the building premise? Does that mean building or does that mean the land?
No, yeah, we should probably clarify.
Because I believe in the work we're doing in the planning commission, we say at the property line.
Yes, you're right.
I think they should both say the same thing.
Yeah, right. I mean, I kind of understand this to mean that, but, you know, as long as the attorney
We might
doesn't,
understand it to
Right.
mean that.
Yeah, ambiguity.
Today
I'd say
we might,
property line
yes.
would be a good thing.
right,
Absolutely.
no odor will be detectable from outside of the property line.
Any other
Property
discussion?
lines, and then
I'm
that
sorry.
just calls into question, maybe we should say property lines of the permitted premises. Do you think? Because property lines of what? You
Yeah,
know,
right,
that-
yeah, no, that's great.
You're right, they could own adjacent property that may not be a subject to the permit.
That,
so,
yeah,
sure.
exactly. Okay, so we'll just insert that, or,
Just a quick question on that. Is this permit for a building or is this permit for a piece of property?
well, it's gonna be for the property, don't you think? I mean, it's gonna be
The
for a building.
permit that the board issues will be allowing the applicant to apply for zoning for a particular piece of property.
So then maybe just say the permitted property lines, the property lines of the permitted. What do we call it?
Premises,
Well,
because I know that the odor, you know, I think everybody's really hoping that it's contained at the building. But it's not a violation unless it's past the property line, is what I've been told. So do you have a different way, David, that we should word that?
I was just thinking that what we were saying is we want to eliminate the ambiguity. Are you talking about being able to smoke outside the building? Or are you saying being able to smoke beyond the property lines
I think,
of the permitted, the permits property?
right, yeah,
Whatever you call that.
right, yeah.
Property.
And I think they're calling it premises, meaning the lot that
Yes.
you're
Thing.
having the operation on.
So property lines of the permitted premises?
Yeah.
Is that the way of saying it? Sounds good.
And I would not probably want to change that permitted premises because it's used other places in here. And then the attorney's office might say, well, why did you change that when we're using it? Now we've got, you know,
Mhm.
but I think that property lines does clarify it.
Just because premise isn't defined in either one of the ordinances. so
Yeah, that's true.
we need to clarify that. Good.
Yeah.
When you talk about setbacks, for example, property line setbacks, is there language that refers to the structures?
Yes, the planning commission, that's the planning commission's job, and the zoning. ordinance to establish the appropriate setbacks.
And does that match this kind of language?
Yes,
Consistent.
right, yeah.
Any more discussion on applications? Lost my agenda. Okay, if we can always come back to it, we have the opportunity. The next item we see on the agenda is interview questions. And are these is this the same as the evaluated process, or is this in addition to where you were trying to get some information, Chris Patterson, of whether we couldn't, what type, how, when?
Yep, the last month, we had several questions that I was to submit to the attorney, and I just did that on Monday of this week with everything that else is going on, and I have not heard back yet. So I think we're gonna have to table that to our next meeting, unless you want to talk about something about it. But I took pretty good notes of all the questions that we had at the last meeting, and so it was pretty comprehensive, I think, about what we should be asking, what we shouldn't be asking. And I did ask if Chris could provide that. You know, a lot of times we get things back from the attorney and it's an attorney-client privilege document, so that can't be shared outside of the board. And I did ask him that I was hoping that, you know, told him I'm on this committee submitting these questions on behalf of this committee, and I'm hoping he can give us something that is something that we don't have to, you know, yeah, exactly.
Sure, yeah,
So-
I know you're taking all kinds of notes, and I think we accurately reflected in the minutes, the concern subcommittee
Yeah.
has, you know, with the types of questions we ask them, whether we're allowed to ask them or not, and,
Yeah,
you know, some of the information being not subject to FOIA and the privacy
Yeah.
concerns that we have, so.
yeah,
So
exactly.
we'll have to wait to hear back from the attorney on interview questions. And I know our member at large, way on that side of the room, we had talked about a flow chart that would help us out with the process. Getting, what's the smile?
Nothing.
Just wondering if there was any process made on it, any progress made on it.
Yes, the first conversation that I had with Cheryl, I think we mentioned it in the course of the meeting last time, was whether or not what we were looking for was something like a Gantt chart. And I asked her for a little more clarification afterwards, and it seemed clear to me that that's not really what we were trying to do. Gantt chart would be more appropriate for the people building and setting it up. So, but what we're looking at is how do we respond to, here's the application. Once you've approved the application and that everything's in order, we got everything we have to have for them to apply, then it seems that somebody, I assume the trustees, are going to want to review that probably with the person, because we need to be able to say, how are we making this decision? I've gotten the impression from what I've heard here that you're concerned that there are going to be far more applicants than there are permits available. And if we don't have a transparent and justifiable process, then, you know, it's woo-woo and the lawyers don't like it. So I thought, let's try a value weighted evaluation process. And looking through the applications, it seemed to me that they break down in sense into three basic areas. So the document that I have for you, there's 3 pages here. The document itself really is 2, and then the last page is just some notes for clarification, which may or may not be included with it. The asterisks, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so you can see which things relate to what.
What did you call it again? Value.
It's a value weighted approval process. That's the label I put on it. Let's say that. The first little paragraph, kind of a preamble, and I double spaced it to facilitate editing. It seemed to me that we were speaking on behalf of the people of the township, and expressing desires for this process to be a benefit, so we can meet not detriment to the quality of life and everything. So what I said was, it seemed to me that we had three areas. The first was the idea of the actual piece of property, since that's what's being used to the permit for. The second one is then how is that operation going to take place? And the last one has to do with sort of like, how does it affect people in the neighborhood? So we were just talking about today. I put some numbers in just to illustrate my thought that they could be graded. You get 10 points for this, and you get 5 points if it's this, and you get -5 points if it's this. Something like that. So at the bottom line, you add them up. And one possibility might be that if the applicants already have other licenses, already have experience in the business, that there might be a multiplier applied to that if we like the idea of having people who've done it before. Because it seems to me that there's two goals. First one is to try to ensure that we have people who are going to be successful at the business. We don't want derelict buildings. We don't want people who are doing really shoddy process and constantly having to, that poor man out of the supply road with all the dogs and everything. How much does that cost the township? It's just trying to get that straightened up with all these years. So I'm gonna be able to measure time. Hopefully it's going to. And then the other side is, like I said, people we have business takes place. So I don't really know specifics about a lot of these things.
Well, I certainly like this as an additional tool for the township board to apply during the application process. And maybe I misunderstood or we misunderstood, but from my point of view, I thought what we were looking for was an internal process flow chart of how things are going to happen once an application comes to my desk, what needs to be completed by me, what items can be done concurrently to move that application to the township board. I know it involves a review process, and like I explained before, if you walk in with an application for a house and you walk in with an application for a house and they're both dated with today's date and all other things being equal, if you came in 11 and he came in at 4, probably going to get to yours first, just as a matter of courtesy more than anything else.
Yeah.
I may even review them a little bit concurrently. You all have about the same information. And then I'm like, oh man, he did a great job, but he didn't provide me a site plan. Yours goes on the back burner because I've already deemed it incomplete and I moved right ahead to his application. That's how I would see these taking place, using the checklist and going down. And you know, I can review multiple applications at the same time, and you may get to a point that you're on standby and I'm focusing on this one now until.
And that was one of the questions
Yes.
that I'd written down and did send to the attorney, how, what should be the order of processing, you get multiple applications, if you do. Do you do them in chronological order, or do you do them in the order of, okay, just like you said, you've got one, but it's not complete. And then you've got one over here and it is complete.
Yes.
So does this one get processed first because you have the limited number of licenses or permits that the township's going to issue? So do you,
In my opinion, it's the first most complete application gets priority.
right?
All things being equal, if you both dropped off the same application and one of you said, oops, I forgot to bring my checkbook with me. Bang, I'm going to the guy that already dropped the money in the pocket.
As you've been describing, I've heard your descriptions, it seems to me that this is going, from you, this is going to be a yes or no. You said if they've checked all the boxes, everything's all there, I have to approve.
Yes, I'm verifying, that they have that information. And
So
and I can
you may
only-
end up
yes.
verifying, I don't know, 20 applications. They're all there. You're going to say these applications are all in order,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So then now what do you do? I mean, that's my impression.
And
is that
then you
our
go,
job
then
is
you
to
go
try
to a
help.
chronological. I mean, I don't think we need to get, maybe we do need to get down to the date and time submitted, and maybe I need to actually invent just a one-page cover page is submitted with each application. Your application was received at this time on this date. Your application received 5 minutes later. I got down yours. I found it incomplete. I'm 3/4 of the way down through his and his is still complete. Yours is going to go to the side until I can get farther down that checklist.
So one, has the board made any statements about whether or not first come, first served is going to be the answer? Is there any precedent for that? Is there any precedent against that? Can the application period be a starting now and ending now, and at the end of that time, we'll evaluate how many applications we had and choose the winning whatever.
Yeah.
I mean,
The
you know,
board
sometimes
has-
they do lottery.
We do have a timeline written into the ordinance in which I have, to review the application.
Mhm.
So basically, if you bring yours in on Monday, you bring yours in on Tuesday, you bring yours in on Wednesday, you're just a day apart on when I have to get back to you to deem it's complete.
How much
Again.
time does it give you?
What is it?
Month?
I forget what it was.
Is that the 120 days, Bob? No, that's when we have to act on it.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I thought it was.
I
in
didn't bring the
there.
ordinances in here with me. The board has not really discussed a timeline for whether it's gonna be a first come, first serve thing. We haven't discussed that because we've been waiting for the zoning ordinance amendments. And then in the meantime, we said, well, let's get going on some of this other stuff that needs to be addressed. Because for instance, somebody could come in and they want 6 permits at one location. There's this stacking thing that people can
Yes.
do with certain of the licenses. So they can have more than one license at a location. And I think there is a concern too. I've heard this expressed, it has not been discussed at the board, but I've heard this expressed that someone could come in and, for instance, apply for all of the medical marijuana licenses. So,
Deep pockets.
yeah, so is that going to be allowed? Do we need to put something in place to make sure people can't do that?
So there's not been any decisions along those lines?
No.
As far as the board's.
Mm-mm. No, we just have the ordinances and, like I say, fine tuning some of this other stuff has not, we've been kind of waiting for the zoning ordinance amendments, but we need to be fine tuning this other stuff too.
We had a public comment. this month, I think. The idea that the current information was that this was going to go into place. before we were ready to do that. So has
Right.
something been done to reestablish when?
Yeah, it was pushed down the road to June something, I believe.
Okay. So there is a date, might change, but at this point, there's a date certain, as of this date, you can apply.
Yes, we keep pushing that down the road. We've pushed it down the road several times because we want things to be in place.
Which part of it, some people happy,
Right, exactly.
but there isn't any statement about when we're gonna close doing it for applications.
No, that hasn't been discussed.
So
I don't think that's been anticipated that, well, when if it comes to the point that all the permits, would be issued, then there would be no point in taking more applications because there's no permits available.
Just to follow back on your question, I think it's a little ambiguous, but in the ordinance, section 5, approval, issuance, and denial. It states that all inspections, review, and processing of the application, including transfer applications, shall be completed within 90 days of receipt of a complete application and all required fees. See, I don't even know if you're piling it on my desk if it's complete or not, but I think the intent of this is to say, I have 90 days to get back to you and let you know whether your application is complete or not. I hope that it never, ever takes anywhere near that long. And then the
Right.
board shall approve or deny the permit within 120 days of receipt of the completed application and
Yeah.
fees.
So that's from the day you forward it to the board.
Yes, yes. But I think that's what it meant, was that I have 90 days to
Mhm.
turn it over to the board. To complete, well, no, I have 90 days to determine, whether it's complete. Now, there, you could put like 5 subheadings under that, because does the clock start ticking again if I'm 45 days through the process and I tell you today that I'm missing a copy of your dog's birth certificate and you take another 45 days to get it to me?
Mhm. Yeah.
Well, being of a certain age, I can remember the plans for a big event that grossly outgrew what the people planning it expected would happen. And Woodstock was an interesting event. And I don't think we want to do that here.
No.
So we've said, I mean, I don't know how official this is. We've said this many permits for A, B, and C events.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do we justify you get it and you don't?
Yeah, that's right.
Because that's going to be the argument. And if you can't say this is why we do it this way.
And like I mentioned at the last meeting, the board did discuss several meetings ago that we need this scoring rubric type thing to help us, which you've
I think
kind of
he did a
done.
great job.
This is really what you've done here, David.
Yes.
And so it'll be interesting. I don't know where that process is at. I think Ron was supposed to approach the attorney's office and ask them to provide us with some kind of scoring rubric. And, maybe it winds up being a combination of what they've got and what you've got here or something, because there's factors to take into consideration. So what are you going to use for your factors that you're going to decide on whether somebody gets a permit or not,
So
might
does
not be
our
the same
committee
thing as what they
recommend
do in Caucasset. What's
this?
that?
Does our committee recommend something to the township board? We're
Um,
recommending that you use this kind of,
Well, we
rubric?
could. That's not really one of the things that the committee was formed for.
Our
But-
exact instructions are to develop the interview process and administrative checklist for marijuana applications. I think it's narrow in focus on purpose, and they're looking for a recommendation based upon that.
so who's gonna do the interview process?
Well, I think part of what I asked the attorney about is, at one point in our discussion at the last meeting, we were talking about the board doing the interview process, but then in another community, it was 2 people who were involved with the whole setting up of the whole marijuana structure for that community. And so it wasn't the board that eventually approved it. And I think we're looking for guidance from the attorney's office on that too. Who should be the one that is doing that? Because really we talked about, are we going to have a pre-application interview? So then that would seem like that should be maybe somebody that's not on the board. See what I'm saying?
Yes, absolutely.
But are we even gonna do that? I don't think we've come to the.
I think we were talking about
Right.
the legality of it,
Exactly.
because when I
Right.
talked to the DDA director at the Caucasset, it almost made it sound like it was a very preferential personal decision. A couple of us people are going to talk to them. If we don't like the answers, we're not even going to give them an application. And I'm
Yeah.
not comfortable with that type of process at all.
Right, yeah, yeah,
And you also talked about the idea that there could be proprietary information, so you can't do it.
in an open meeting, yeah,
So
exactly,
Somebody's gonna have to
right,
ask these questions and bring some kind of thing to the trustees.
right,
If the board is the people that make the final decision, they have some basis to do that.
yeah,
I
Well,
like
they-
numbers because they're kind of hard to argue with.
Yeah,
It's
that's right.
12. No, it's 47.
that's
Yeah.
right, yeah, exactly, yeah,
So for the interview process, we're attempting to determine whether or not a pre-application interview is even appropriate,
Which is one of the lawyer questions, right?
which is one of the attorney questions. If it isn't, then we go to item B, but if it is, then we're asked to develop that interview process.
Right.
Well, did you have a chance to look at these? Did you see what the categories are?
Oh, I did.
Oh, yeah,
yeah.
I think it looks very good.
I think they're about 90% accurate. I think you did an excellent job of, just like you described, for illustrative purposes. You know, we could change the categories. I mean, I think you did an excellent job based upon whatever knowledge you do have of the township and the inner workings and everything, and the weighting the same way. You know, maybe the township board might feel that it ought to be weighted differently, but like you said, it's for illustrative purposes. Right? What's the most important to the township, and assigning a value to that important.
Yes. I mean, there's room for development in the township.
Mhm.
The question is, how is that developing into place? We know that just the least of this year, there's an issue. with this.
Mhm. Yeah.
We need another member on the planning commission, not to interrupt, but this guy's talking like
Yeah, we do.
planning commissioners and
Yeah.
asking the right questions to
We
invoke
do.
discussion.
We would encourage
Didn't mean to
David
take
to
anyone
apply.
off topic, but when I hear that gets me excited. I'm sorry.
Can I just ask you on this, what do you mean by market connections?
If you have somebody who has already made arrangements, I'm gonna grow a product for you to sell at your business,
Mhm.
then we know that this,
Versus I'm
Business
brand
has-
new. I don't know where I'm going
Oh, I
to
see. Okay,
get
yeah.
my seeds. I don't have any employees lined up.
Right.
I
Yeah, I
have,
see. Okay, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
or I have a license in Kalkaska for a retail store. I'm planning to supply my store.
Yeah.
Those kinds of things. They get
Right.
Pretty simple and pretty straightforward. But
Yeah.
the reason I put them in that way was if the township board's goal for development is that they would like to see more integration, they'd like to have new businesses come in, not just who's already here. So if you're not here, forget it, we're not gonna let you come in. You know, I'm here, so shut the door.
Mhm.
Then the weighting might want to be different. But it seemed to me that if you have in place some of the things, or you've done negotiations for some of these things, then the probability of them being successful
Mhm.
is higher.
Yeah.
than if-
And what's vertical integration?
I've got 5 licenses.
Oh, I see.
So my
Okay,
business is going to grow, process, certify. and
Right,
deliver
yeah.
To the retail store.
right.
This is what the usually number.
I see.
You know, a lot in terms of grapes around here. There are wineries that are producing their own grapes, making them wine, and they sell it at the wine. Some of people are growing grapes and then sell them to somebody else. All they do is make grapes.
Mhm.
Other places, they're making wine, selling the wine to somebody else to put labels on it.
I
So you
see.
got different ways of doing it.
I see.
yeah, we've got wineries that are growing the grapes and importing a certain amount of the grapes too, and it's
Yeah.
with their blends.
Exactly, exactly.
Sure.
And so those kind of integrations
Yeah.
increase the flow of capital in the community, flow of cash in the community, and
Mhm.
it's a good multiple.
On the second page of your draft document there, where you're talking about the byproducts and waste management, I'm
Right.
just direct a question to Bob. Do you know, does the state regulate that stuff?
They have a waste management program. I forget what they call it. There's an entire like handout on how these processors and growers have to handle their waste.
Yeah.
I'm not that familiar with it, but I know
Right,
you've probably seen, I know
Yeah.
we've gotten it in a couple emails or correspondence at the planning
Yeah.
commission level.
The
as
state
well.
has a specific
okay.
for
Yeah.
water and for solid products for everybody.
Yeah.
Mhm. And they,
Specific.
okay, and every person who's gets a license from the state has to follow that. Right, so we don't have to duplicate that part, right?
I'm not a big fan of duplication of it.
Right,
No.
but if it's not handled at the state, then we should,
Yeah, I don't think they
Make
can
sure.
set up a farm market stand for their byproducts. you
no,
know?
no.
Who doesn't?
So, but-
Who will, who
Yeah.
should, who's required to do inspections.
Yeah. I don't think we have, I know some communities require, I'm not sure the legality. I know I heard something different in some last night's training that I didn't get a chance to ask the instructor on, but I was always taught that from a zoning perspective, I don't know about the licensing perspective, the zoning runs with the land and is permanent. You do not have the right to ask them to reconstitute or reprove to you that they're in compliance with the zoning ordinance. In this particular situation, I'm not sure what the rules are.
I
The state
know,
has a boiler inspector, the state has an
Oh,
elevator
yeah,
inspector,
absolutely. Yeah.
operations.
I think the township has to hire somebody, actually. I know Kalkaska, they have a compliance officer who does quarterly inspections over there. And the state does annual inspections. And according to what we heard at the tour thing over there, the businesses over there actually like the quarterly inspections by the local compliance officer, because then they know when the state inspector comes in, they're not going to have any issues. They've already, if they've run up against something, they've corrected it. Yeah, and remember that, you know, they have to reapply every year. You know, the licenses and the permits only last for a year, so they have every incentive to stay, you know, they've all spent all this money to get this operation going. They've got every incentive to make sure that it's compliant with, you know, the state and the local laws, so that they don't get shut down or something, or not get their permit renewed at the township level or license at the state level. You know, but as far as who's going to do it, I guess we need to know what all are we going to be, see, that's the part I don't know. What all is the township going to be enforcing? Like you say, the zoning, okay, that's gonna be, the zoning's gonna be the zoning, and once that's in place, it's gonna be hard to,
Who's
be out of
checking on
compliance.
how they're handling their waste and
Right,
byproducts?
yeah.
Who's checking odor control? when
Yeah,
you get a
exactly.
complaint?
right. So I don't,
The activities, audits and indoors. make Clear that you better have something that's pretty clear and defensible. If you're
Yes.
saying you
Yeah.
can't keep doing it this way.
right,
it's a lot of money in the township.
yeah, for sure,
Ultimately, they lost, because they really
right.
didn't.
That was the noise thing out there with the, yeah,
And it was, it can't be loud enough for reasonable person to be upset. by it or something.
Yeah, right. And the township already does have a noise ordinance,
I'm just saying in terms of
Right.
some of these other things.
right, yeah.
How is it? Does the planning commission, are you guys starting to talk about how we were gonna allow the zoning? Because you won't let them build a building if it's in the middle of wetlands. And,
If they get a permit from DEQ, I will, which I have seen.
but
Yes, I understand.
Exactly, and we're not gonna let somebody build a casting plant in the middle of a neighborhood of Lanford Road, right? Because it's zoned. So what kind of definitions of what's okay, where is okay, kind of things that being developed? Certainly
Yeah.
that's gonna have a big play in.
Some, I mean, we've got it down to the industrial area and agricultural area. So you have to use the setbacks. Accordingly, setbacks in agriculture are going to be larger because there's residential stuff mixed in with the agricultural stuff. So try to keep fringing on the neighbors. And then we're trying to make the setbacks bigger there. And of course, that's going to make the piece of land that they put it on bigger. So smaller pieces of land aren't so easily put it on. So yeah, we're working in those directions.
And will it be based, I mean, 50 plants? 50 plants in this room. 100 plants. Well, it's gonna be a lot of stuff. So is that going to be taken into account? A license, the smallest one, to be in a smaller location, closer proximity to other stuff.
We haven't
You
actually.
probably don't want a really big one next to Mill Creek Elementary School.
Yeah, no, well, there's some state laws to that too.
Yeah.
We're implementing the severest distances away from churches and
Yeah.
schools that we can, that the state does.
Yeah.
So. But no, about a smaller operation, we haven't really addressed that.
Whether it's class A, class B, class C, 500 plants, 1,500 plants, stack licenses, 4,500 plants, they didn't distinguish between it. They said you are going to be a processor or grower, regardless of what you do, you're going to comply with the same set of standards, no matter how large you're. So
I can't foresee that there would be any aspect of this that would traffic. We have some.
Yeah.
Not big vehicles, it's not a heavy load, it's not going to deteriorate the roads, it's not going to be a lot of production. So,
Mhm.
operation. There's no way you could tell that they were doing anything is when they're harvesting.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Within the field.
Mhm.
So those. kinds of
Harvesting
things
hops, you
probably-
mean? Harvesting hops, you said? Oh, marijuana. Oh, okay.
But by the same token, what's the township going to do in terms of utilities? Have natural gas in a lot of places where somebody wants to put a thing. that means that we're going to have 5,000 pigs out there. Or- Gas line. Takes a lot of electricity, lighting and everything.
Mhm.
Area. Do you want those delivery trucks or whatever going in and out?
Right.
Just, those are the kinds of things I was thinking about that would be, yeah, they're complying with the rules. Does it fit what we would like to see happen in the township? How does it work? If this facility close to one of the trunk lines?
Right.
I don't know where you guys are. on that. So that's why it's big.
Mhm. How does that work with with the electricity? I mean, it's up to the owner, operator
if
to,
you want to establish an operation, I'm not an electrician, so I couldn't tell you. I would hope that you have a business plan or at least some partners or consultants on your end that will tell you that if the location is sufficient, if you have, suitable utilities for whatever you need. From my perspective, from the planning commission's perspective, like, I don't mean to say they don't care in the sense that, well, we don't care. They care about the things that you mentioned. Okay, you don't have natural gas, and you're going to need X number of cubic feet that you're going to be using of propane. As part of the review process, site plan review, the typical home has a 500 or 1,000, or in this area, I've seen people with 10,000 tanks out there. He comes, says, I will need a 3,000 gallon tank, and I want to put it out by the road because it has to be within X feet of some kind of access where a delivery vehicle can get to it. That's where the planning commission, if they're doing their job, goes. Vision this big old blob out in the front yard along the road. How could we mitigate the nuisance that may cause from an appearance standpoint or something? Well, you need to put a vinyl fence around it. You need to put some landscaping, one or more things. That's what the planning commission's job is, when they see those and think, okay, here's the obstacle. We're not going to say no because you have the obstacle. We're going to see how we can mitigate the effect that's going to have on the community when we make our decision.
Yeah, police training. It's there because they
Yep.
just so people don't have it sit next to them.
Yeah.
And they're gonna sit next to them. So same idea as what you're saying.
So I think we've kind of intermingled our interview questions and flow chart discussion with the need for some answers from the attorney to get past this point. And I think we moved right on down to number 5, other topics the subcommittee wishes to address. And I think
Before you go there, Bob, I just want to address the flow chart thing. So, you know, we've got some flow charts in the election process
sure.
that say,
Yes.
you know, if the voter has done this, like they've moved and how we confirm or, you know, whether they're still in the community or whatnot. And it's kind of a linear thing, you know, so, I mean, is that the way we should be going? Like 2 parallel lines?
That's how I see it, or just a set of blocks, you know, I mean, this is the way I envision it, just like I do a land use application. So the application has been submitted, the review process begins,
Mhm,
and then I like to use the if then.
mhm.
If he has item 1, then I go to item 2. If he has item 2, then I go to item 3. If item 3 is absent, where do you go from there?
Yeah,
Do I skip it and go to item 4, or if I have multiple applications, will I shove it aside and automatically,
yeah,
you know, go aside? But I don't see it being a big, huge, complicated, you know,
Right.
101 arrows on a single sheet of 8.5 by 11 paper. I
right,
see it as, you know, 8 or 10 blocks on a piece of paper up on the wall that you can look at as an applicant, or you as a township board member, planning commissioner, myself as a zoning administrator to know what I need to do. Okay, I have deemed the application complete. What then?
yeah,
I fill out my cover sheet. Well, it says that, boom, I turn it over to the township clerk for presentation to the township board.
mhm,
Or maybe there's some intermediate pre-application or
right,
mid-application interview process, depending upon the answers we get from the attorney.
yeah. So you are processing these down in Five Lake Township, I think. Are you?
Yes, yes. Actually,
Okay.
I have an administrative assistant who does, I haven't touched with one in 5 years.
Wow.
They don't have a real flow chart. They just follow the application and use the application itself as the checklist. That's where I
Okay.
kind of got this idea is to, well, just make it a more visible checklist. A
In the
physical
application,
document
yeah.
that I have to pick up a pen and either initial
Right.
or put a check mark on.
Right,
There's
So
plenty
it
of room
seems
in
to
the
me that
margin.
box number 1 is you. When you're satisfied that everything required for the permit has been reviewed, it's there,
Yes,
then it seems to me that this next step is planning commission's got to say whether or not the site that they're talking about putting it on is okay.
we can't do that until it goes to the board and the board actually issues a permit. And that's what we were talking about. What can we do consecutive? If I've determined the application is complete,
Right.
that doesn't mean that the board's going to give them the okay. And we were discussing, does that give them enough assurance that they can go ahead and make application for the special use
Yeah.
permit zoning at
Right.
the same time?
and that was a question that went to the attorney.
Yes, because, and I thought I may have missed that in there.
So clarify that for me. Are you saying that the only way this is gonna happen is by special permits? Is he-
Yes.
Yes.
So
Yes,
We're not gonna put it in zoning, but this kind of business. in this kind of location. I'll have to-
It has to be a special use.
So we're not amending zoning as it stands. We're simply allowing.
As
well,
a special use.
I mean, it will be amending the zoning ordinance because our zoning ordinance will specifically list the types of marijuana-related industries that are permitted and in what zoning districts they're permitted in. And it will have another section of what specific special use standards will be applied by the planning commission in determining whether they meet those standards.
The reason I'm asking is I have an experience in Elk Rapids. All the churches property were zoned residential because except for one church, the whole village, they're all really amongst houses.
Yeah,
So they're all zoned residential. Villages, sign don't allow freestanding signs in zone, right? Every single church in Elk Rapids has a freestanding sign. because they all predate zoning.
Oh, sure, yeah.
But what that means is if the congregation decides to make any substantive change in the sign, they lose their grandfather.
That's exactly right. The non-conforming use is extinguished.
So when one of the congregations do something, and the zoning board of appeals, and the zoning board of appeals said, we're not going to listen to this because this isn't a zoning special use permit, because this applies to every single piece of. Well, what you're essentially saying is every single business that falls under this is a special permit. It's not. They're all the same.
But no, we're totally misinterpreting the concept of permitted and special uses. Actually, you're required in your zoning ordinance. You have two categories under the Michigan Zoning Enabling Act, and this is a little off topic with ours as the Board of Planning Commission, but you list permitted uses by right that are either subject to administrative review by me or administrative site plan review by the Planning Commission. You have special land uses, and special, as I tell people, what's so special about them? I don't know, but you have deemed them special enough to require an additional level of review. And it has to have the site plan requirements, just like a permitted use, but they also have to meet additional special use standards. And those standards are typically related to health, safety, and welfare of the community, like in the class that we spent last night. There are additional standards that the use may be compatible if they meet these additional standards. And maybe it's the size of the building, maybe it's the setbacks, maybe it's additional landscaping. You know, and again, that's where the
Screening.
Planning Commission comes in on, it doesn't matter what you do, somebody may have objections. And if the Planning Commission deems it a material objection, such as, hey, that's directly in my line of sight, I don't want to see that 3,000-pound propane pig out there, and the Planning Commission deems that reasonable. Well, the Planning Commission has a number of discretionary options in which to mitigate that. But again, just like you said, it can't just be willy-nilly. It has to be based on the ordinance. We are doing this because it will protect the, you know, natural view and environment seen by the neighbors, because it will, you know, protect the, you know,
So
less
does that mean that
objectionable view.
there will be the public hearing?
All special uses require a public hearing under Michigan law. Yes.
300 feet.
I'm required to notify all adjacent landowners within 300 feet of the property that's subject to the request.
Okay. And so then that would be a situation where people could come to that meeting and say, I have an objection, such and such, whatever, and you guys deal with that. Okay, so
Absolutely.
that's gonna apply to every one of them. So that kind of needs to be
Yes,
slow,
Yeah,
because it's gonna happen in every instance.
that's automatic. That's.
yeah.
that's
We're
already
more
written
talking
into the-
about how are the applications, you know, once they come in, are they going to Bob? Then what's Bob gonna do with them? And then where are they going after they leave Bob's office? How much time can they be at Bob's office? How much time can they be at the board? What's gonna happen with them at the board? The board, you know, we've got this set amount of time to deal with them, so do we, you know, is there gonna be like, and maybe, you know, if, you know, the board's gonna interview them, maybe there's like 2 people on the board who interviews and say the board, you know, looks at the application, or we have, you know, the application, and there's questions about something that's on the application. Well, okay, we see that you want to do this. How do you propose to do that? And so, you know, maybe I'm just speculating here. We haven't discussed this at the board, but maybe there's 2 board members who are going to be the ones that are going to have a short interview process, you know, with an applicant to get these questions answered so that the board can continue on with consideration of that application. See what I'm saying? And so, that's, I think, what the flow chart needs to set up exactly. Okay, this has happened, now what? We're to keep it moving, in other words, to make sure it keeps moving and doesn't languish in one step or another, because,
So if the board is the second step. following this, one has to review the application and confirm, yes, everything is in order here.
mhm, yeah.
Here you go, guys. Yes or no?
Right.
Then then they've issued a permit. And then you guys have to put out the public hearing for whether or not they're allowed to do that.
Well, the
They
planning
say, "We
commission's,
can't make that work. There's too many people that object to it or whatever. Now what happens?
Well,
So
that's
to
what,
me,
that's what you have
not
to
in order.
understand too. And again, this is a zoning issue, not what we're tasked to do, but zoning approval is not based on popular opinion. If you have a room full of people that are opposed to it and they meet the standards in your ordinance, this planning commission is required by law to grant it. That doesn't mean they're not gonna be a lot of talk back and forth to mitigate some of those objections.
mhm,
But they have to know where that reasonableness is, you know?
I guess as I heard you describing it, it sounded to me like it's kind of a working process.
Yes.
How do we solve issues that are arising as a result of this special use?
mhm.
If we've already told the township residents, it's a done deal, we've already approved it. What's the point?
Well-
And I'm not arguing with it, I'm just trying to figure out, we're talking about flow chart, okay, so 1,
But they have to get,
2, 3,
they have to get two things, as I understand it. They have to get, they have to get a permit. Okay, and the board is going to be issuing the permit, but they also have to go through the planning commission through this special use.
When they
Process.
get the permit from the board, when and if they get approved permit from the board, basically that permit allows them to come right back to me and fill out an application for a special land use application. And I do all the legwork, but ultimately will end up in front of the planning commission where there will be a public hearing conducted.
and they're gonna be applying for state permits for.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah, they have to do all that other stuff with what's on the property and, I'm not sure what the whole state process is, but I know it's pretty comprehensive.
And I'll
And
reiterate,
expensive.
it's never a done deal. I mean, you may have 40 acres of land and you come to build a 1,000 square foot house right smack in the middle of it. If you meet all the administrative setbacks I'm required to review, I can't arbitrarily deny it. I am required by law, if you meet the standards, and the planning commission has the same additional standards, but they have the additional added task of being able to make discretionary decisions. But those decisions have to be based on not just an arbitrary thought or an opinion or public opposition or in favor of, but relating right back to the health, safety, and welfare guidelines of the ordinance.
I get it, that makes sense. Makes
Yeah.
sense. It's,
So it's a really kind of an extensive review process. Because there's gonna, the zoning administrator, then the board, then the planning commission. And of course, anytime it's on the board's agenda, the public comment, you got 2 public comment periods at the board. People can always have public comment outside of board meetings too. They can email board members and call board members and stop in and see board members and that type of thing. So people do get a hold of us.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like in terms of that flow chart, it's really kind of self-evident. Just because of what has to happen.
Yeah,
It
it's
sounds to me
just-
like you
It'll
know
fall
what
into
that
place,
is.
yes.
Yeah, it's just we don't have it down on paper, and I think that's kind of one of the things that this committee should try to get that down on paper.
It doesn't seem incumbent on the township to be trying to do these things. Okay.
Yep.
If
Absolutely.
they don't already have a building, they're gonna need to be looking for a builder.
Right.
getting this Building permits and all that sorts of all that, and they can choose to do that on their agenda.
Yeah.
But you're gonna do 1, 2, 3.
Mhm. Yeah,
Is
there's a
there
lot.
anything After that,
get.
once you say, okay.
Well, the public hearing, of course, and
Yeah.
then making sure they've met the setbacks or any fencing or landscaping requirements.
Screening.
Yeah, any of that, those things that are in place. And after that,
And it's released the homes.
When
I-
the
I
planning
see.
commission renders their decision, if it's a denial, I'm like, "Yeah, that's work for me." But if they approve it even with conditions, then it's basically what that is a direct order to me to issue the permit. Advise the applicant that there are conditions
The
that.
special
will
use
follow
permit.
it. Yes, the special use permit.
Yeah.
It's,
Not
it's
Not the
that
same
special,
permit that the
it's that
board would
special use permit that will provide is the evidence from the local municipality to allow them to start pulling their construction permits from the state to begin. the process.
And then those inspectors get in, making sure the compliance.
Right, they have them.
So is there anything more after that that the township has to do? Do you send it back to somebody else, or do you have new steps that you have to do?
I will be involved in the initial staking of the property and a final inspection when they request a certificate of occupancy, the Grand Traverse Building Codes Department will call me. And basically, I'm just doing the walk around. You know, I think our ordinance is a little outdated. Typically, these aren't done in many other communities. I mean, if you go out there at the end of the process and find a mistake, that's a bad time to find it. You need to find these issues at the beginning of the process. Typically, when I do most of my inspections are residential, I'm looking, do they look at a completed material fashion from the exterior? Do they have oversight? Yeah, that's a decoration, you know. Yes.
Oh. Uh-oh.
So can I assume we're kind
Yeah.
of stuck on the interview questions
Yeah, I
and
think
part of
so.
the flow chart until we get additional answers back from the attorney or
Right,
the answers?
yeah,
And then I think with those answers, I think we'll be able to make substantial progress
yeah, me too.
on basically getting everything set up and finalizing our initial task, which was to develop the interview process.
So are we passing anything along to anyone else at this point, or we just, at this point, we're just waiting to hear back?
I understand it.
I think we're waiting on legal responses to whether a pre-application interview is appropriate or not. That'll be part of the flow chart process.
Mhm.
If it is, then we have a little more work to do on how extensive we think that interview process. And again, I'm going to go back to what you provided. I think that will give the board some really great direction to look at, or
Mhm.
whoever is going to be charged to use either alone or with some type of other interview process.
Mhm. And hopefully we'll have the scoring rubric information too, and we can incorporate that into the flow chart, or just where that's gonna be, where that comes into play, you know?
This would be like those 3D word puzzles. I mean, that's,
Yeah.
how do you solve for that?
Do we have precedent? Examples of it happening in the area to refer to? I don't, not inside of it all, but the impression that the city has had some legal issues in terms of how it's set up.
Yeah,
Yes, they did originally. There was a circuit court that kicked that out.
Yeah.
So I don't know exactly what
I
that
don't
was,
either.
but circuit court decision is binding in the circuit that that court controls, so that would affect us as well.
Mhm. Yeah,
It would be
The
important.
lawyer should be aware of that, and should be.
I would
Yeah.
hope so.
Yeah, don't use those.
yeah, right, yeah. I kind of see that we just get these topics. I think we're pretty much done with this application.
Yep.
A couple changes today. And then we get these things done, and then I think the committee's gonna make a recommendation to the board that you use this revised application, that here are here's what we found about the interview process. Here's what we, came up with for a flow chart and making a recommendation to the board that they, whatever comes out of that.
I
And
think
then-
we're all on the way.
Yeah.
So,
And then we wouldn't be meeting after that unless we were asked to meet or something. The board threw something back to us or something like that.
so other topics the subcommittee wishes to address. I know we've covered quite a few of those other topics as we get down, but I just want to check that off the agenda. I think either now or in subcommittee comments and discussion, we need to discuss our next meeting date.
How quickly do you think the attorney will get back with you on it?
I wouldn't, well, I think it'll be well before we meet again. I think he probably just had some research to do out of the questions that they weren't able to be answered, quickly. And I wished I would have gotten them to them sooner. And just didn't happen. So I apologize for that. I need to grab the calendar so I can see.
Yes, because unless everybody wants to meet on a Sunday, we can't meet on the 21st again.
Yep, that is the same day.
Well, I have that as I have that as a Saturday too. Bye.
Meeting on Mondays.
We met on a Monday, yes.
Yeah. So what do you see in Bob, like the 23rd or something, that Monday, the 23rd? There is no one else meeting in here that night.
I can do a Monday, Thursdays I prefer, but Mondays I will make
Oh,
work.
okay. You prefer
Well, no, I
Thursdays?
cannot do Monday the 23rd. That is my joint planning commission meeting day.
Okay. Well, yeah, okay.
Oh, I don't
Well-
feel so bad now.
Well, if we said 4 weeks from today, that would be the 19th, I think. How does that look?
My calendar appears to be open and clear on Thursday, May 19th.
You think so? Okay. All right, so do we want to say 5/19 at 6 PM again?
5/19 at 6 PM. So, any more subcommittee comments, discussion, anything you'd like to chat about this? I think we made some excellent progress last month, and I think that once we get the attorney weighs in on what we're thinking of what we can and can't do, we'll build take another big chunk out of this and be on our way to making a recommendation to the board relatively quick. We have an opportunity for public comment. If anyone in the township hall, now that we have some public would like to speak, we're more than welcome. None. And anybody visiting us on Zoom that would like to make a public comment?
Yes, Mr. Glenn.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. I just want to thank this committee. You guys have done a great, and gals, you've done a great job over the last few weeks getting this to where it needs to be. And thank you for all your effort. I think the results are really, really starting to show. So thank you again.
Thank you for your comments. Any other public comments? Anyone else on Zoom?
I'll just ask Doug.
No public comment from Doug? Is he the only other one on? Okay, there's been an opportunity for public comment. Would anyone like to make a motion to adjourn? We have a motion to adjourn and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, there's a motion on the floor to adjourn. I'll take a roll call vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Aye. None in opposition, Lois. You can show the meeting adjourned at 7:09 PM on this sunny Thursday evening at Grand Traverse County
Thank you.
Thank you.
without snow.
That's